Hi, Frank. Hi, Reem. So we're going to start with our theme song by Muhammad Asaf. And hopefully this week you'll be able to hear it, Frank. I figured out what I did wrong. Okay.
Okay.
Good morning, Frank.
Good morning.
It's Robert.
Hi, Robert. Thanks for joining us. Appreciate it. Robert's one of the actors, and he's the actor to play with.
Cover to cover.
Thank you.
Has the meeting start?
Yeah, I think we're starting about now. I think we're waiting. I don't hear it yet, Jacqui. The song. There's a theme song we thought we'd hear first.
Dr. Romano, where are you right now physically?
I'm in New York.
Oh, you are? Okay, good.
Jacqui's in New York too, and
are you going to be in New York for a while?
Yes. I just want to. We're gonna. It's not coming out, Jacqui. Yes, I'll be in New York for another week or so, and I go back to France. But yeah, we can get together.
Yes, I would like that. Talk to you about your book.
Yeah, let's talk a little later. Jacqui, is there? It's for some reason I don't hear it. Maybe some other people hear it. Maybe I'm deaf.
I hear you, Dr. Romano. I don't hear other people either.
Yeah. I think we've got Aladdin and Reem with us. Welcome, all of you, Jacqui. But I can't hear the song yet. I guess it's coming up, huh?
I can hear nothing either, so if that helps, I don't hear anything either.
Thank you. Yeah, I was wondering if I'm going deaf or whatever. Music deaf.
You hear the music?
Not yet.
You don't hear
it? No music on my end either, Dr. Romano.
Yeah.
Okay, hold on. Hi, Muhammad on Facebook Live. You don't hear it yet?
Not yet. I think I've got the volume up and everything, so.
Up maximum.
Yeah. Huh. Could be that someone's preventing you from hearing it. Remember last time?
Yeah.
We had a few people hacking in to our program.
All right, well, we're letting the music play out.
Yeah. Okay.
It's 2:00, and the theme today is we read from the invitation. Yesterday we had a big thing happen for Palestine. The International Court of Justice ruled on the complaint from South Africa while they didn't order a ceasefire. It agreed with South Africa that the conditions for genocide in Gaza are likely present, and it ordered Israel to report in a month to show that it's correcting itself. We'll discuss what the difference is between the International Court of Justice and the International Criminal Court. And we'll analyze the implications of this important ICJ decision on South African complaint against Israeli agents. And we'll look at the Amy Goodman segment because she had a lot of really great experts on last night. And also Frank will contribute from his experience and expertise, since he's one of the lawyers for the Palestinian people who filed a complaint with the ICC, the International Criminal Court, against Netanyahu in 2021. So we'll discuss the complex issue of the International Criminal Court. Will they do anything to help Palestine? Since 1948, since the 1948 Nakba, Israeli agents in the U.S. accomplices have committed war crimes against Palestinians. The ICC, however, has not engaged in tangible actions to stop these war crimes. For example, no arrest warrants have been issued in 2022, and this is all from Frank's input, that in 2022, Russia invaded and occupied parts of the Ukraine. And a year later, in 2023, the ICC issued an arrest warrant to President Putin, and that was really fast. In addition, Karim Khan, the prosecutor of the ICC, recently said that he would deprioritize crimes committed by the American forces in Afghanistan and focus on atrocities committed by the Taliban, etc. So the question is going to be asked, and Frank will enlighten us on this, is the ICC overly political? Does it favor Israel and the United States? Has it failed Palestine? So that's basically what we're going to be looking at. Now, the first thing I want to do is to clarify for a lot of people who may be confused about the difference between the International Court of Justice. So I'm just going to read brief definitions and descriptions of each court to clarify, because when you expect courts to do a certain thing, you have to know what they were created to do. And I'm welcoming more people on Facebook Live. Monica, welcome. So the court of the International Court of Justice, that was in the news yesterday. What is it? It's the principal judicial organ of the United Nations. It was established in June 1945 by the Charter of the United Nations and began work in April 1946. The seat of the court is at the Peace Palace at The Hague in the Netherlands. Of the 6 principal organs of the United Nations, it is the only one not located in New York. The court's role is to settle, in accordance with international law, legal disputes submitted to it by states. So you have to be a state. You can't be an individual. It has to be a state. And to give advisory opinions on legal questions referred to it by authorized United Nations organs and specialized agencies. So this court deals with states or agencies. The court's role is composed of 15 judges who are elected for terms of office of 9 years by the United Nations General Assembly and the Security Council. It is assisted by a registry, its administrative organs, its official languages are English and French. So that's the ICJ. Now, the ICC is a different character. Can you all see my
Let me just add, Jacqui, the International Court of Justice that we just heard from yesterday, its decisions, it cannot really enforce the decisions. The Security Council of the UN is what enforces those decisions, but again, it's all up to the goodwill of the member states to enforce those decisions.
Right.
Go ahead, Jacqui.
And one of the issues that came up that refers to that is Biden made a list of things that he wanted Israel to do. Those were specifically the things recommended by the ICJ yesterday. Okay, provide food, stop bombing civilians, put the water back on, blah, blah, blah. Now, those specific things are going to come up by the General Assembly and the Security Council. And the question is Biden, as the United States, as it usually does, going to veto the very recommendations that it gave Israel already, because Israel is pissed off. So this is it's really put Biden in a kind of an interesting bind, because if he does what Israel wants him to do, is to veto this decision, and when it gets to the Security Council, Biden will be vetoing what he told the Israelis to do. So, so it's going to be an interesting thing to see how he squirms out of it. Yeah. All right, so now what is the ICC? The ICC is an independent agency. I was trying to Google out how it actually started. Do you know how it actually came into being, Frank?
Yeah, and it came into being, it came into effect in 2004. There was a lot of debate around it, but every country in the world, every member of the UN signed on, except for 6, the United States, one of the presidents, I think it was maybe Clinton, who signed it, but it wasn't ratified by the Senate. It wasn't even, I think, submitted for ratification. And Israel's not a member of it. But again, you can't still enforce decisions on land of member states, even by countries like Israel that are not a member of the ICC. And so that's how it came about. And it's, again, it came into effect in 2004.
Okay.
And Palestine signed on, about 2015, it became a member state. So it's a member state of the ICC.
Okay, so, and what its mission is, and this is its webpage.
Yes.
It says its mission is to try individuals for genocide, war crime, crimes against humanity, and aggression. And this, you don't have to be a state to do it. So this is where individuals per se can be charged.
Let me just add, you can't be a state because this is a criminal court, and you cannot, for instance, condemn the United States for accomplice, to Israel's war crimes, and then put the United States in jail. So it has to be, being a criminal court, you go after individual state actors. That's a big difference between the ICC and the ICJ.
Thank you for clarifying. And then they talk about how the court works. And it says that the court's founding treaty, which was called the Rome Statute, which is very interesting to look up, a little complicated, but the Rome Statute granted the ICC jurisdiction over four main crimes. First crime is the crime of genocide, which is characterized by the specific intent to destroy in whole or in part a national, ethnic, racial, or religious group by killing its members or by other means causing serious bodily or mental harm to members of the group.
I'll be going through those elements when we discuss that. But go ahead.
Deliberately inflicting on the group conditions of life calculated to bring about its physical destruction in whole or in part. Imposing measures intended to prevent births within the group or forcibly transferring children of the group to another group. So this is very important. Okay, and certainly Israel is culprit here. Anyhow, second, the ICC can prosecute crimes against humanity, which are serious violations committed as part of a large-scale attack against any civilian population. The 15 forms of crimes against humanity listed in the Rome Statute includes offenses such as murder, rape, imprisonment, enforced disappearance, enslavement, particularly of women and children, sexual slavery, torture, apartheid, and deportation. Third, war crimes, which are grave breaches of the Geneva Conventions in the context of armed conflict, and include, for instance, the use of child soldiers, the killing or torture of persons such as civilians or prisoners of war, internationally directing attacks against hospitals, historic monuments, or buildings dedicated to religion, education, arts, science, or charitable purposes. And finally, the fourth comes falling within the ICC's jurisdiction as a crime of aggression. It is the use of armed forces by a state against the sovereignty, integrity, or independence of another state. The definition of this crime was adopted through amending the Rome Statute at the First Review Conference in Uganda in 2010. Now, on December 15th, 2017, the Assembly of States parties adopted by consensus a resolution on the activation of the jurisdiction of the court over the crimes of aggression. Okay, so that's basically delineates our two. Now, since everybody is all excited about the decision yesterday, I think one of the best analyses that I saw yesterday in the media was Amy Goodman. So we'll listen to this for a few minutes before we have Frank talk to us about the ICC, because it's important to understand the meaning of this legislation, this decision yesterday.
The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. The International Court of Justice, the UN's highest court, has found a plausible risk Israel's committing genocide in Gaza and ordered provisional measures, but stopped short of calling for an immediate ceasefire. This is the president of the court, Joan Donahue, reading out the vote of part of the ruling.
By 15 votes to 2, the state of Israel shall, in accordance with its obligations under the Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide in relation to the Palestinians in Gaza, take all measures within its power to prevent the commission of all acts within the scope of Article 2 of the Convention, in particular, A, killing members of the group, B, causing serious bodily or mental harm to members of the group, C, deliberately inflicting on the group conditions of life calculated to bring about its physical destruction in whole or in part, and D, imposing measures intended to prevent births within the group.
Over a 1-hour ruling, the International Court of Justice President Joan Donahue in The Hague quoted Israel's defense minister, Yoav Gallant, saying that as the war got underway, Gallant had said, "We have removed all restraints. We will eliminate everything," referring to Palestinians as animals. Judge Donahue continued, Gallant went on to describe Hamas as comparable to the Islamic State. After proceedings concluded today, the South African government said it welcomed the ICJ's decision. We're continuing with our guests right now. Diana Boutou, Palestinian human rights attorney in Haifa, Israel. Raz Siegel, Israeli historian and professor of Holocaust and Genocide Studies, Stockton University, joining us from Philadelphia. And Mahmoud Mamdani, professor of government at Columbia University, specializing in the study of colonialism. Diana Boutou, if you can talk about what exactly the timetable is right now and the true level of enforcement that the ICJ or even the United Nations overall has. Go back to, using as a reference, your involvement with the 2004 decision where the ICJ ruled the separation wall that Israel built in the occupied territories illegal.
Well, let's first start with this particular case. I think it's important to keep in mind that just last week, Prime Minister Netanyahu said that nothing is going to stop him, not the ICJ, not The Hague, nobody is going to stop him, and that he's going to continue to pursue ahead. And of course, the reason he's doing this is in part because he is genocidal, and in large part because he knows that the minute that the attacks on Gaza are over, that his term in office is also over because of the internal dissent inside Israel. And the reason that this is important is because we haven't heard yet what they've said, but judging by that, it means that they're going to ignore this ruling. And if they ignore this ruling, it then becomes imperative upon the member states to take this decision to the UN Security Council to have the ruling enforced at the Security Council level. And it becomes really a question of whether the United States is going to veto or abstain or what exactly it's going to do. I can tell you in terms of what happened in 2004, 2004 was a very different case. It was an advisory opinion. It wasn't a case of the same type. And in 2004, Israel took the exact same position, that it wasn't going to stop the construction of the wall. In fact, it accelerated it. But part of that decision indicated that there are other states, third states, other countries that are also obliged to make sure that Israel upholds international law. And that was the part where the world failed. And out of that, this is where we saw the BDS, the Boycott, Divestment, and Sanctions movement, ended up being recreated or reconstituted on the 1-year anniversary of the ICJ ruling, so in 2005. And the reason that it came together was because we expected that the world was going to come forward and do something to make sure that the advisory opinion was upheld and enforced, but instead they did nothing. So once again, we will likely see that Israel is going to ignore this ruling. It's then imperative to take it to the UN Security Council. But all the while, it's very important that we continue to boycott Israel, to divest from Israel, and to push for sanctions. That the global BDS movement should be growing at this point to make sure that the age of Israeli impunity finally comes to an end.
Roz Siegel, if you can talk about the aspects of genocide. You write, the crime of genocide has two elements, intention and execution. And what Joan Donoghue, the head of the court, at least for another few weeks, read in terms of the decision for what constitutes genocide and what this means. As an Israeli historian who lives in the United States, well, Israel tried to say this doesn't matter. The fact is they participated in this, clearly showing it matters a great deal to them. And also what it means for the United States support for Israel and what's happening today with this court finding.
Yeah, so I think that it was very important that the court quoted some of the statements of intent. It's again important to emphasize that we're talking about dozens of statements of intent to destroy Palestinians, intent to destroy in the language of the UN Convention, and by people with what's called an international law command authority, so state leaders, war cabinet ministers, senior army officers. And these statements were made over time, so not just a week or two after the 7th of October Hamas-led attack, but over time, actually until today, when we think about what Prime Minister Netanyahu said on 13th of January, when he said that Israel's attack will continue, whatever happens in The Hague, he also reiterated the portrayal of Palestinians as Nazis, for example, right, which is basically a mechanism of humanization, a mechanism that portrays all Palestinians in Gaza as legitimate military targets. So these statements of intent, dozens of statements over time by people with command authority, filled with humanizing language, right, human animals, monsters, which historically we know are indicators of genocide. So I think it was very significant that the court mentioned and quoted some of these statements to emphasize that it's not, as Israel tried to argue, that it's not something that we can disregard, that it's actually a key element of the crime of genocide, and we should be paying attention to this. But then it also emphasized a number of times, actually, a really unprecedented scale of killing and destruction on the ground, the catastrophic situation that Palestinians are facing now. And in this context, I think it's very important to say that the court basically accepted South Africa's argument that Israel's quote-unquote evacuation orders are not actually, as Israel claimed, humanitarian measures, but they're actually genocidal in essence. That means that they are meant, which is what they did, to displace millions of people, almost 2 million Palestinians, well, virtually almost all the Palestinians in the Gaza Strip, and under intensive bombings. And we know that Israel also bombed Palestinians fleeing on routes that it designated as safe. It also bombed Palestinians in the southern part of the Strip early on, which it designated as safe. And of course, under the conditions of the total siege, where we today, indeed, this measure did what it was intended to do, right? It created famine, it created the spread of infectious disease, it created a population that has no access to clean water, has no fuel, has no medical supply. It destroyed all the universities in Gaza. It destroyed a majority of the hospitals. It destroyed agricultural land. It targeted cultural sites. So everything that we know historically that happens in genocide, and with this massive displacement that is now, we know that even if Israel's attack stops now, many Palestinians will continue to die of these conditions of life, again, to quote the convention, Israel deliberately created in order to bring about the physical destruction of the group in whole or in part. So I thought that it was very important that the ruling actually quoted and emphasized both the issues of intent and the dynamics of violence and the conditions that we see now on the ground. This is very, very significant. And the court is saying the possibility that Israel is likely to is committed to Gaza.
And
Jacqui, we can continue with this because I'm going to cover a lot of this. It's not going to leave us much time.
Okay,
And we get questions and comments from people
sure. Does
participating.
anybody have any questions about the ICC ruling? Does anybody have any questions for Frank about the?
Yeah, let me go
ICJ
through it.
ruling?
Let me
Okay.
go through a bit. First of all, and the introduction has been already set forth, that the International Criminal Court of Justice, again, cannot really enforce the decisions, and it can go to the Security Council. South Africa asked the court to condemn Israel for violating the Genocide Convention that Israel and South Africa are part of. And so it stopped assaulting the Palestinian territory, and also to stop and order immediate ceasefire. Israel rejected the genocide claim outright and even called, the South Africa's claim distorted and discriminatory, and even, contested the International Court of Justice, the decision, as being anti-Semitic, as it always does. It always does. So if the court has decided not to throw out the genocide charges, it has jurisdiction. That's very important. Now, what's really important here is that the International Court of Justice determined the plausibility that Israel is carrying out genocide against the Palestinian people. What does that mean? At least some of the acts and admissions committed by Israel in Gaza appears to be capable of falling within the provisions of genocide. And Israel, and it also ordered the 6 provisional, now these are provisional measures, pending the final judgment. In the meantime, and that could take weeks before it happens. Hopefully it will be urgent that the judgment will be rendered, but these are just provisional measures. Israel must prevent the troops from committing genocidal acts, prevent incitement to commit genocide, and allow more humanitarian aid into Gaza, and take effective measures to ensure the preservation that evidence is not destroyed. The ruling then, Israel needs to show after a month what is this doing to carry out the court order. What's so important about the International Court of Justice decision? It breaks Israel's entrenched culture of criminality and impunity for once, which has characterized its decades-long occupation, dispossession, and persecution and apartheid in Palestine. That's what's so important about this decision. But the crux of everything is, how is that going to affect the ICC, the International Criminal Court that you've talked about, and you've defined it so well that I don't need to go into it. It prosecutes individuals for war crimes, etc. And I, in 2021, submitted a 130-page complaint along with other lawyers, El-Haq, others, against individuals, Netanyahu, Lieberman, Gantz, and their accomplices, Obama, and also Trump, for war crimes. Now the procedures are like this. First, evidence is collected, and then the prosecution will ask the judges to submit a summons to appear. If the individual does not appear in court in The Hague, the ICC is also in The Hague, then it is to submit arrest warrants. And then after that, there's hearings and trial, etc. Now, when I was underground in Ramallah, after I'd been in prison and I was released in 2019, I was visiting Shawan Jabarin. Shawan Jabarin is the head of El-Haq, and he had just received a letter from the ICC saying, please don't send us any more evidence. We have plenty. We have enough evidence to pursue Israel here. At least they're not committing, they're pursuing, but we have enough evidence for the case. But recently, Karim Khan, who you mentioned, Jacqui, is the present prosecutor of the ICC, said, we're still carrying out the investigation. That's contradictory. to what was said before when I was in Ramallah in 2019. Why is that? Because I claim that the ICC has become overly politicized. Now, you already mentioned that Russia invaded Ukraine 2022, and just a year later, Putin received an arrest warrant. But the Israeli agents and their accomplices have been committing war crimes against Palestinians since Nakba, 1948, and still not one arrest warrant yet. Then you also mentioned, and that was one of the things I'd stated, 2021, Prosecutor Khan said he would deprioritize crimes committed by American forces in Afghanistan, and because the ICC is going to probe more important crimes by the Taliban and the Islamic State. And the argument is, has the International Criminal Court, including the prosecutor, acquiesced to political pressure from the United States? The Khan justified his decision by saying the court had limited resources, but this is a serious, erroneous decision because it sends a message to all world leaders saying that if your crimes like genocide, ethnic cleansing do not give rise to the seriousness of Taliban and ISIS crimes, you will not be accountable. And that leads us to the next question. Is Prosecutor Khan of the ICC now is going to avoid a high-profile case such as, does he intend to abandon the Palestinian case against Israeli agents and their U.S. accomplices? Now let's get to genocide, which is very relevant today, subject to the International Court of Justice decision, but that's also being decided by the ICC. On October 7th, 2023, Israel, of course, as we all know, indiscriminately targeted 2.3 million civilian population, destroyed infrastructure, residential, commercial buildings, mosques, hospitals, etc. But this is the important thing, and the International Court of Justice verbalized this, which was also verbalized by one of Amy Goodman's speakers there, that the Israeli government officials have verbalized their genocidal intent. For instance, Gallant said, as he said, we are fighting, Gallant, who's the Israeli defense minister, said, we are fighting human animals and we are acting accordingly. And through history, describing others as human animals has inspired terrible, often genocidal atrocities to arguably justify those actions. The Armenian genocide, the Holocaust, and the Rwanda genocide are just three examples. Another example of genocidal language is Yitzhak Kreutzer, a member of Knesset representing the Jewish National Front Party, called for Gaza to be flattened and said for all residents there is but one sentence, that is death. And members of Netanyahu's own Likud party have called for the use of a nuclear bomb for strategic deterrence. To manifest this normalization of genocidal rhetoric, Ariel Kalner, a member of Likud party, said, right now there's one goal, Nakba, a Nakba that will overshadow Nakba of 1948. Now, that genocidal language is called incitement to genocide, which is the violation of international law that was cited yesterday by the International Court of Justice. Now, let's get to the Rome Statute that you cited, Jacqui. The Rome Statute is what governs the law for the ICC. Genocide means any following act committed with intent to destroy in a whole or part a national, ethnical, racial, or religious group. And okay, then there's, as such, there are elements to genocide, killing members of the group. Now, we went through this and we could see many examples. There were almost 27,000 people have been killed, over 64,000 people have injured. But the killing members of a group, there are multiple traumatic amputations of children, horrific burns that have ended in death, the likes of have never been seen before, according to Dr. Nick Maynard, said after the team found themselves in the Al-Aqsa hospital having to withdraw following increased Israeli military activity. 70 people, these are just examples, the tip of the iceberg. 70 people were killed at the Jabalia refugee camp in northern Gaza, and footage of bodies and lying in the rubble and so forth. So that's one element of genocide. And you don't have to satisfy all the elements. That's just one that's violated. That means that those people like Netanyahu and government that are involved in it have committed genocide. Number two element, causing serious bodily or mentally harm to members of the group. I know you've already cited this and people have talked about it already, but imagine you're in a hospital and the hospital is being bombed. You're not only going to get more injured, but you're being seriously affected psychologically because you're very vulnerable in the hospital. So there's a great deal of psychological fallout to that. And an eyewitness, Gemma Connell, said, what does it mean that a hospital was already overcrowded, overloaded, and well beyond its capacity is now without absolutely critical reinforcement to support ever increasing number of casualties? And the World Health Association director Ghebreyesus said that more than 600 patients and health workers were forced to leave the Al-Aqsa hospital. Again, that's just an example. That's another element of genocide. The other one is deliberately inflicting on the group conditions of life calculated to bring about its physical destruction. And much of Gaza lies in ruins. 20%, according to the United Nations, of its pre-war structures have been destroyed. More than half of the Gazans are experiencing severe hunger, starvation. Unemployment has risen to 85%. You take away the means of living, that enhances starvation. That, of course, gives rise to physical destruction. It's a calculated policy to bring about the destruction of a group of people, the Palestinians. So exacerbating unemployment, no minimum means of living, exposing to disease, and so forth, are all part of that destruction and lead to the violation of that element of genocide. And what about January 7th, and it's continuing today? Many trucks have been lined up to enter Gaza full of goods, of vitally needed food, water, medical kits, testing equipment for delivering babies and things like that, according to 2 US senators and other people. Depriving a population of food, medicals leads to physical destruction of Palestinians, because many of those trucks have been stopped, rejected by Israeli inspectors for the reason that we know. It's a policy really of starving and depriving people of essential goods that leads to the destruction of that person. Okay, so now there are just a couple other issues that are genocidal law. Under Article 7 of the Rome Statute, again, that governs the ICC, the deportation or forcible transfer of population is a violation. It's a crime against humanity. The Israel's far-right minister, Smolstrik, has called for Palestinians to leave Gaza, make way for Israelis who could make the desert bloom. That's anticipated act of forcible transfer. And not to mention all the Palestinians that have been forced to leave their homes in Gaza and the West Bank, which is a violation of that article. Now, finally, there's another aspect of non-genocidal crime, against humanity. The large-scale destruction and confiscation of Palestinian property is in fact a war crime, particularly committed as a plan or a policy. We see what's happening in Gaza here without going into detail. So just as an example, mid-December 352 school buildings in Gaza had been damaged and destroyed, more than 70% of the enclave's education infrastructure. So finally, in conclusion, with respect to the situation before the ICC, Israeli leaders again have articulated that they're committing genocide, and they continue to commit genocide. As long as they have the money and the arms to carry this out, given by the strongest and arguably the richest country in the world, the accomplices, the United States. This means the United States is giving the green light to do this. In fact, when we talked about President Biden, I'm going to address this now, says he gives, what, $10 million a day plus arms to Israel, on the stipulation that, be careful about civilians. That's exactly what Chamberlain did in World War II when he went to negotiate with Hitler, who just took the Sudetenland in Czechoslovakia, by saying to Hitler, okay, we'll give that to you, but don't take any more land in Europe. And that just fed the ferocious appetite of Hitler. And just as the United States is feeding the ferocious appetite of Israel by giving them the green light and just giving them a caveat. Well, be careful with civilians, but in reality, continuing to feed Israel an unstoppable supply of money and arms. In other words, as an accomplice to enable Israel to continue its massacre and its genocide. One of my biggest pet peeve, and I'm concluding here, is people lament today a lot about, well, the Inquisition, the Crusades, Holocaust, the Chile, Pinochet in Chile, and the Desquas in El Salvador. And we talk a lot about lamenting about it, but there's a lot of talk about what's happening in Gaza today, but very little action to stop a genocide, stop the massacres that we can actually do something about. And finally, people ask me, what happens then if the ICC is doing nothing and heretofore are doing nothing? I think they might be inspired by the International Court of Justice decision, but they're still doing nothing. And the International Court of Justice decisions often are ignored. When it made that decision against Russia with regard to Ukraine, Russia just simply ignored it. And one of the speakers with Amy Goldman said, Netanyahu has already said they're going to ignore the decision. So what do you do? What do we do from the Wild West, where I'm from, when you can't redress grievances before a court? You take the law in your own hands. And I think what we need to do to stop this is not just get out in the streets. I mean, there's lots of talk in these groups, and some of the activists are getting status by organizing conferences and stuff. But I think the real changes will be made when we get to the streets and we cause mayhem in the United States and in Europe. We occupy buildings and we pressure. And as Amy Goldman said, clearly we've got to continue the boycott and divestment, and in a very aggressive way. Otherwise, this genocide will continue and Israel will simply ignore these decisions.
Yeah, Frank, I think you've expressed a passion for this whole situation that we all feel. What I want to add one thing that, I'm an art historian and architect and taught heritage and conservation in the Middle East. And one of the things that really breaks my heart is the deliberate erasure of memory, which relates to the fact that many people who are pro-Israel, pro-Zionist, say there was never a Palestine. There's no such thing as Palestine. The Palestinians really came from Arabia recently. So what they've done in Gaza, which is a very ancient place, which has monuments dating back to Neolithic period, showing the presence of an indigenous people in Gaza. That Gaza was part of the Greek and Roman Empire, with many monuments and structures in Gaza. And it was called Palestine. And Gaza is all through the Bible. You can read references to Gaza all through the Bible. And Gaza in the early Christianity was one of the first places where there were churches built. And one of the oldest churches in Christianity, St. Porphyrios, was destroyed and bombed by Israel. There has been a massive destruction. There are articles on the internet, if you want to break your heart, to read about over 600 vital monuments going back from Neolithic period to to universities, et cetera. But all the historic archaeological monuments have been destroyed. So they're erasing the memory of Gaza. On top of that, they're digging up cemeteries, which is, to me, one of the most heinous crimes. They have destroyed over 16 cemeteries and probably more that we don't know about. And one of the accusations that is you think of this, this is just, typical anti-Semitic tropes, but it's been verified by authorities that they're digging up fresh bodies, and they take these bodies to a certain place, and people are convinced that they're doing organ removals of organs, because this is one of the things Israel's kind of been accused of for a long time, of particularly with Palestinian prisoners. When they get the bodies of Palestinian prisoners, they don't give them back, and the suspicion has been that there's organ removal and trafficking. So this is a real thing.
they've actually received
Not
the
only-
bodies and found that the organs were missing. We're right.
Right.
Yes.
So it's
more
the
than suspicious.
memories. They're erasing
Yeah.
the very memory of Palestine. And this is such a tragedy because we are not just who we are today, but we are from our past. And the identity of Palestinians is so very vital. So this is for me the heartbreak of the destruction of these fabulous monuments. Some of the most beautiful and historic mosques in one of the oldest Christian churches. This to me is just so heartbreaking. So I'd like to welcome a whole new bunch of people who came on Facebook Live. We're doing this on Facebook Live too. Hussein, Ken, Sen, Moidi, Monica. Thank you, Facebook Live people. I'm sorry my phone fell down a couple times. But yeah, please, anybody with questions or comments. I mean, we need to support each other. I'm exhausted from all this. And I keep putting signs up in my building saying ceasefire and boycott, and people keep taking them down. I have family members who are posting, we have to start buying more from Israeli goods. And I'm just heartbreaking. I don't understand how good people that we all know and we love are supporting this genocide and don't see it. I have people who've stopped talking to me because of this. Dear friends I've had for years and years and years. It's just heartbreaking. I feel, I'm not paralyzed, but I feel like I've been hit by a stun gun or something. I mean, you just see, and today is a Holocaust Memorial Day.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
today
irony
is
of
the
it.
day that they're supposed to stop the killing, and 174 Palestinians were killed today. Civilians.
In the Cam Yunis area. But
Yeah.
are there any questions or comments? I'm sure that there are, even if,
I'll make a comment if you don't mind.
please. Oh, please.
Okay, thank you so much. My name is Abdul Hamid Sayam. I am
Ahlan wa
UN.
sahlan.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I was working for the UN for many years, and now I am an accredited journalist to the UN as well. So I have 2 points to add. I thank you for your briefing and your insightful comments. Very helpful, and it's timing. And I hope these kind of panels will expand to invite so many other people to listen. I have 2 comments. First, about Israel has been rejecting UN involvement, UN resolutions for so many years, and it has been, it got used to being immune from any accountability, responsibility, or punitive measures. It has been used. I could give you so many examples. For example, the ICJ in 2004 passed a legal opinion upon a recommendation from the General Assembly about the wall, the separation wall which Israel built on Palestinian land in the West Bank. The ICJ on 9 July 2004, after deliberation for about 9 months, they passed the opinion asking Israel, it said, the wall is illegal, it should be dismantled, and Palestinians who lost land or property or livelihood should be compensated. So Israel did not listen to that legal opinion. There are so many UN resolutions from the Security Council, simply said the 242, for example, asking Israel to withdraw from the land it occupied. It didn't. Resolution 271 about Jerusalem asked Israel not to change the demographic or cultural composition of Jerusalem. It didn't listen to it. Resolution 476 and 478 in 1980, both, they emphasized the special status of Jerusalem. And they said all the Israeli measures are not null and void and shouldn't be respected, and called on every country on earth not to have any diplomatic representation in East Jerusalem. There was one in Jerusalem in general. There was one embassy at that time, which is Costa Rica, and they left. In fact, they closed it and went back with, but President Trump brought back the issue and recognized Jerusalem as its eternal unified capital of Israel. And the Security Council met, and there were 14 votes in favor of denying what Trump had decided about Jerusalem. And there was one single veto or one vote against that, which is Nikki Haley at the time. And of course, everything had been abandoned because of the veto. And Nikki Haley introduced another resolution welcoming the Trump administration plan, which is called the deal of the century. And when they were vote on that draft resolution, there was one vote in favor, which is Nikki Haley only, one vote, and 14 either against or abstention. So that gives you an idea why Israel had been, it got used to be protected. Every time there is an accountability, every time there is an attempt to blame Israel on something, the veto is waiting. So it got used to it. So why not? If Israel knows that it's shielded from any blame, from any accountability, it will continue doing that. And that's why the ICJ this time, because there is no veto, Israel is not used to sit in the cage as an accomplice. That's why it's really going out of its mind. How could they? Who are those who can ask Israel and try to present a list of indictment against it? That's going out of their mind. So this is, I think, it's an important what happened in the ICJ, and not only the provisional measures, but also the preamble that the judge read before, like recognizing Palestinian as a distinct people as any other people, accepting the jurisdiction of the court. This is important. There's so many others that, especially reading what is happening in Gaza, quoting all UN officials, especially in the humanitarian field, like Lazzarini of UNRWA, Martin Griffiths of UN, of OCHA, the humanitarian coordinator, the WHO, etc. So that is very important, and the word was listened. That is an important point I want to raise. The second point, if you don't mind, if I go,
thank you.
I will try to be brief. The second point is about Karim Khan. Karim Khan, the way he was elected to the ICC is very suspicious.
Ah,
I mean, a few people know that there was a long list, and the short list was left with 4 people. 2 Africans, 1 Canadian, and Karim Khan. So 2 Africans, impossible to elect African after an African, because Bensouda was African. She served 9 years. She finished her term, and it's unacceptable for the international community or the 123 nations who are members of the Rome Statute to elect another African. So it's impossible. So the 2 Africans were disqualified. The other one is Canadian, and the current deputy prosecutor of ICC is a Canadian. So it's impossible to elect a Canadian as prosecutor, and his or her deputy is Canadian. So it's impossible. So it was left with Karim Khan. And if you don't know Karim Khan, you should read about his CV. He was defending all the war criminals, especially in Africa. He was the lawyer for Charles Taylor. He was the lawyer for Saif al-Islam. He was the lawyer for many Kenyan and Ugandan and all these kind of war criminals. So that's one thing. The second, as you mentioned, in the case of Ukraine, he visited the area immediately twice, okay? And he appointed 42 investigators. He reached an agreement signed between the court, Lithuania, Poland, and Ukraine to cooperate in the investigation. And he issued an indictment, an arrest warrant for Putin in May 2023, right? I mean, after 1 year and 3 months, which is unprecedented, so fast. In the case of Gaza, on 29 November, he went to 29 October, he went to Rafah crossing. he stood there and he gave a statement. I recommend that everyone should read what he said. He only talked about the crimes of Hamas.
Yeah.
And the crimes that committed by Hamas, and this Hamas and Hamas and Hamas. And he just expressed some sympathy with the Palestinian civilian victims. And even he spoke about the Holocaust while standing on the Rafah crossing.
And Abdel Hamid, he also, remember, he's talked about it's too bad all these trucks are waiting to bring in essential goods, but he didn't talk about his responsibilities, did he?
Exactly.
As a prosecutor.
And,
Go ahead.
I mean, the comments is unbelievable. Then he was invited to Israel by the families of those kidnapped in October 7th, not by the state. Israel is not a member of ICC, as you know. So he accepted the invitation of the families. Is that questionable? A man of ICC, a prosecutor, to be invited by family. He went to spend 3 days. He visited the families. He listened to them. He visited the settlement on the Gaza border, those which they were subject to attack. He even went to visit the hall where there was a party there. And you should read his comments there.
Abdel Hamid, could you conclude, because other people wanted to talk?
Okay.
Thank you,
and
please.
When he went to Ramallah, all Palestinian NGO and humanitarian groups and human rights experts refused to meet with him. And he gave that broad statement about, looking into all crimes committed. And that's what gives you an idea about Karim Khan and how the Palestinians are not expecting anything from him. Thank you.
Where is he from? What is this country?
He's a barrister from England, isn't he? Originally, before that, I don't know, but he lives in England and was a barrister there.
He's from England. He's English.
Yeah, he's
He's English. He carries he belongs to a group, Islamic group called Ahmadi, a very offshoot of.
I thought he was Christian, Abdel Hamid. I thought he was Christian, though.
No.
He's
Muslim.
He's
Ahmadi.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Ahmadi is not Sunni, is not Shiite. Ahmadi, you should read about it. It's different group,
Islamic group.
who hate Sunni and hate Shia.
Thank you. Now, does anyone else have comments? Thank you very much, Abdel Hamid. There's a lot of you out there, and even if you don't agree with some of the things we've said, please state. This is your opportunity to enlighten us, and maybe we can learn from you, or just your ideas. You're all welcome. Is there any other comments or questions?
Looking to see if anybody's on chat.
Well, this is I'm Wahik Pitopa Machiapielo, Mishante Tawawogalake. I'm just saying my name is Four Arrows, and I offer everybody a warm handshake. As an indigenous scholar, I've written a lot about the horrors of Israeli occupation. In fact, I was invited back in 1999 to the University of Tel Aviv to give a keynote on militarism and education that the Israeli Jews recognized as a problematic. I believe that the horrors of Israelis' occupation of Gaza and the West Bank, and of course the genocide that's going on now, are very similar in very serious ways to the colonial anti-Indianism and genocide and culture side that happened in the Americas. And I don't see a lot of people making that correlation. I just was wondering what you all think about that.
Let me just say, I was at a Native American meeting and sweat lodge, and I was and I'm from the United States, and we're connected with the Indians originally from California. And I didn't, all these years, I had made the direct connection, but it's so close to the genocide committed against Native Americans in the United States for the same reason as what's happening by Israel. I see that. You're absolutely right. And there hasn't been a lot of connection. I think we need to make that connection.
All right. But you know who's making the connection? The Israelis. They say, oh, well, look, you guys knocked off all the Native Americans. So why are you giving us grief about clearing the Palestinians off? So the Israelis have made that connection. I've seen many comments from pro-Israeli people. Well, we did it to the Native Americans, so we have to shut our mouth.
Well, but
they were hypocrites.
The
Yeah.
United States is also responsible. I mean, this would not happen without the United States. So I
Absolutely.
would actually look at it as you're doing it again instead of saying this is a model, right? It's just the United States is doing it again.
Absolutely.
One other question. Can you tell me, my wife sent me your link. I just got off of a conference call, but my interest is, can you tell me, I thought that the results of the ICU were not optimal, but they were going to hold Israel accountable. Can you tell me why you guys are saying it was bad or not a good decision?
Yes, I can address that. It's the International Court of Justice, not the ICU. And I'm not saying it's bad. The main decision was it determined that at least some of the acts and admissions committed by Israel in Gaza appear to be capable of falling within the provision of genocide. And it's very good to the extent that now, because as Abu Hamid said, Israel is no longer allowed the veto to snuff that out. That is a decision that is binding, but it's just a provisional decision. In other words, and then the courts ordered that Israel do certain things to not commit genocide, but it didn't condemn Israel for committing genocide, and it did not, and this is the bad thing, it should have done this, it has enough evidence. It could have ordered an immediate ceasefire. Both those two elements, those arguments, were part of South Africa's initial complaint. The bad part is we should have an immediate ceasefire, but El-Haq says it's implied, because it also says that the decision includes that we need to enhance the humanitarian aid here. And El-Haq says it's actually implied a ceasefire, because how can you bring the trucks in and bring food and water to people and continue the military operations of Israel? It's kind of an implied ceasefire. I disagree. Israel can say, well, we'll let the trucks in, but we'll continue bombing. And Israel, the Israeli government simply says, by the way, you're saying that plausible that we've committed genocide, but we haven't. You have to have the intent to commit genocide. We have not intended to commit genocide. And they just continue, like you said today, Jacqui. There was another, 134 victims in the Camp area that were killed during the announcement, before or after the announcement of the International Court of Justice.
But there's something now. There is another aspect that we haven't talked about, is what will happen when Israel refuses to go back to the ICJ and say that it's been doing, stuff because it could be thrown out, it could be penalized with the UN. I heard one of the things on the later speaker on the Amy Goodman thing said that the UN could really penalize Israel big time, take it off committees, and actually it could lose its membership in the UN. If it defies the ICJ, which it probably will, it could lose its membership in the United Nations.
Does Israel really care? I mean, literally, it is acted with impunity so much. It always feels, well, we're going to have our Trojan horse. I mean, we've got the United States always advocating for us, membership or not. They're totally in denial of international jurisdiction over them. I'm not sure that they'd even be affected by it, but after 1 month, they have to give an accounting to the International Court of Justice, and that can set forth, and that's a weakness, another whole series of contesting by Israel. They can go back to the court and not just poo-poo the decision, but contest these elements that the International Court of Justice rendered in its decision, and can go on and on and on while it continues the genocide.
Did anybody else, have anything to say?
Can I add a few comments?
Yes, please. Yes. Is anybody else?
No, if Aladdin wants to say, I have a few comments, but Aladdin maybe wants to speak.
Aladdin. Can we let Aladdin talk, because he hasn't spoken, and then followed up by you, Abu Hamid? Aladdin, please.
Hello, I don't know if you hear me.
Yes, we do. Yes. We do.
Okay. I just noticed, I tried to analyze a little bit of everyone, aspect, and was focusing on the 1 month period that Israel have to respond. Actually, from a technical side, because I am an architect and I'm in Belgium, actually, and we're trying to understand how can we organize the post-war rebuilding responding to the Norway humanitarian rebuild, appeal. So I would say, I imagine Israel with very goodwill, would say, okay, electricity, sorry, it have been damaged, I cannot fix it. Water, sorry, I cannot fix it, it have been destroyed. What I can do, I want with the willing, but sorry, and that's it. So that will be indeed for technical problem, they can do nothing.
No, that's not the case. No, because they can't bring generators. They are waiting, and Arish bring 500 generator for electricity for every hospital, every institution that needs to be to receive electricity and water also.
And what about water? 97% has been contaminated, right? And probably more now since this military confrontation. And how are they going to bring the water in? I think they can bring it in trucks of just gallons and gallons, thousands of gallons by trucks, bottles. They have it all ready to go, and probably a lot of those trucks have it already in the trucks ready to go. Is that right, Abu Hamid?
They do, and they can also do. They have some kind of desalination for water for immediate use. They can, yeah. So
Aladdin, your comments are well taken. That Israel is going to spin things and squirm out of as much as they can, but I think they have to pass the laugh test here. As Abu Hamid said, there is proof that they have all these capabilities, but they could try to do things like that, Aladdin. I think. Thank you. Anyway, Jacqui, sorry.
I want to add a few points.
Remember the American congressman that went to visit and noted that the trucks weren't being let in. One of the things they noted that the Israelis would not let in was desalination equipment on the trucks. And then if there's something in a truck they don't like, they don't let anything in on the truck. So everything's rejected. So unfortunately, Aladdin, that some of these technological equipment that would be useful may be denied by Israel. So that's another way they'll wiggle out of it.
That's
true. And they'll say it's maybe being used.
I have 3 points to raise. First, Security Council now could meet, which is planning to meet on Wednesday. You can follow the news for informal consultation to pass a resolution to make these provisional measures a resolution. And the U.S. maybe there will be big embarrassment for the U.S. to veto it because it's coming from International Court of Justice. So they will, starting Wednesday, they will start debating the idea of putting what came out from ICJ as a Security Council resolution, and Security Council resolution are binding. That's one point. The second, I want to explain one point. There is the provisional measures, which normally should be issued within 2 to 4 weeks, and the ICJ did. But the core issue, if there is genocide or not genocide, could take years.
Yeah.
So that's, I mean, all the parties are invited to continue submitting documents and other information about the idea of genocide. And when they issue that genocide, it might take, but it will take time to give that core issue of the complaint about
the final judgment. It could take a long time.
Yeah, it will take 2, 3, 4.
The International Court of Justice, though, has made it very urgent for the hearing 2 weeks. So maybe they will expedite things, hopefully, like they expedited the hearing. It's hard to say. But no one's talking. Sorry to interrupt, Abdelhamid, but there's something before we stop. No one's talking about what drives behind, and we've talked about it before, Jacqui and others, what drives the American politicians to continue supporting Israel. And what it is we're in an election year. Biden will weigh. What's his priority? What's his priority? He is a cowardly scoundrel, like many of the American politicians.
It's another issue.
His priority is getting money from the Israeli lobby. Millions of dollars are sent to our politicians that ironically come from our taxpayers that we've been given to Israel, millions of dollars plus arms, back to our politicians so that they continue voting in favor of Israel for the arms and the money. And so his priority is to get elected like all the other politicians. So what they do is they weigh it. My priority is my power, my money, and my election over all these millions of victims or the thousands of victims. I'm sorry, but that's my priority. So it might be embarrassing if the United States veto the Security Council's
It will be embarrassing.
but they could very well do it because his priorities now are getting elected. And like I say, the United States, and I haven't said it, the United States and Israel really, to me, remind me really of the Nazis in Germany and Europe. And I live in Europe. Europe is like Mussolini, you know, and they're all enabling each other. And the bottom line is they don't even care fundamentally what the UN does. It's embarrassing, and it can though. I'm not discounting the International Court of Justice decision to put pressure on politicians, and maybe within the United States the pressure will come, not just through the politicians, through the people, to pressure the politicians. We cannot support a country that's plausibly committing genocide, and now we have to limit and use the leverage that we have. Limit or stop arms and money to Israel on the in consideration that they stop the genocide and do the ceasefire. And many State Department members like Mr. Paul have resigned because we're not using that leverage. I just wanted to bring that in. And if you wanted to comment on that, Abu Hamid or other people, we haven't heard from other people like Reem or Layla. There's a lot of people out there. I'm sure there's questions and comments that we're getting close to the end that we haven't heard. Does anyone have any comments or questions that you want to?
I just want to add one more point before I go about the ceasefire.
Yes.
Normally, ceasefire is between two countries, between two armies. And a lot of analysts who understands ICJ mechanics and the way it works, they said it was intentionally they didn't mention ceasefire because you don't have an army against an army like the case of Ukraine. You have the Russian army, you have the Ukrainian army. So you ask for ceasefire. But in the case of Gaza, it's one army which has planes and it has tanks and it has artillery and it has power, and which is waging one-way war. And if you put the ceasefire term, that means you equalizing between a rebel group, regardless what you think of that rebel group, with an army of a state. So they put the language to mean ceasefire, but it's put they ask one side to avoid any measures that may lead to genocide. So that is the order went to one side. Yeah. For example, when they talk about hostages, the order went to the one side also, to the other side.
Yes.
Yeah. Releasing hostage. So dealing with the rebel group, they dealt with it when it came to the hostages, because you can't ask Israeli to release hostage, the army. But when it came to like measures to end the attacks, which they might lead to or could be considered as genocide, it went to one side only, which is the Israeli.
And of course, the ceasefire could be a condition if some of the or not all the hostages are released. But the international, and I'm glad you mentioned it, the International Court of Justice did mention, on the other hand, we definitely advocate for the release of the hostages by Hamas. So they did not ignore the other side as well, as you say. Anybody else have comments or?
Robert, do you have any comment or question?
Please, I'm sure you do. Don't be shy. Don't be bashful. We need to learn from you.
It's just I have just to inform you. This is not something new. I would say 30 days is over for Gaza. We have connection every day with Family Day. Gaza will not exist. No case after 30 days. So it is irrelevant, So that's really day to day. Now it's day to day.
Yeah.
So you're saying the 1 month really, and I think that's another weakness. Why 1 month accountability? Why not 1 week accountability? Why not 2 days accountability? Because like you say, from day to day, more and more people are dying, that you cited, Jacqui, and it's almost like the Israel, as it stated, verbally that they're going to poo-poo the International Court of Justice decision. Don't care about the ICC. It's doing nothing anyway. We're moving forward. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Good point.
Anybody else? Yes, please.
In fact, South Africa asked for 1 week. That's the
Really?
Thank you. Thank
yeah.
you. That absolutely, and that's much more realistic.
Yeah.
Again, the 1 month will also provide Israel with arms to contest the requirements of these provisional decision, which is still again provisional, but pending that decision you talked about, Abu Hamid, at the end of the day, that there is a commission of genocide and there will be this exact ceasefire. Could take a long time, hopefully not. So in any case, this is urgent, and and it needs to be addressed now. And I think feeding that month to Israel to allow it to contest, again, as we said several times, that will contest the decision. Again, they could use the courts as they always do, and to spread things out and not address their own accountability and be in denial over their own crimes, with all the propaganda that comes from Israel, with all the typical comments that they make. This is unjust. This is discriminatory. This decision is anti-Semitic.
Yes, there is one thing important, Professor. It come to my spirit a week ago regarding the anti-Semitic, definition. In the whole world, we are talking about Islamophobia. Why when it comes to why cannot we say Judeophobia? Why we have to say anti-Semitic to include all the Semitic? So there is something in the definition have to be changed. Islamophobia, Christianophobia, Judeophobia, Buddhophobia. Phobia is international. Whatever your philosophy, you can add phobia. Why you have to canalize to undercover? So not to mention Jewish to be like in the middle of an ethnic. So that is something we will work on, and we will fight the definition of that.
Because Palestinians are Semites. So
Yes. Well, the Arabs, in general, are considered Semites.
Exactly. American mixed Middle Eastern, they are half Semite, half something. Asian and Middle Eastern, they are also. So it's make no sense. We are coming to the point everything have no sense in this world.
Yeah.
So I think
I want to give you a bit of hope. We can end on a piece of hope. Robert, did you have anything to say?
No.
Robert, by the way, is one of our actors in the Bonhoeffer play, the off-Broadway production. A great actor. Anyway, go ahead, Robert, please.
I'm glad you invited me to this, because on where I am, as far as the news is concerned, I am misinformed, ill-informed, and non-informed. And your book was so apropos. It comes at the right moment. It opens up my mind to see exactly what's going on. But what I don't understand, other than the industrial complex, and that's why what's going on is the Palestinian people are they're a humble people, and the bad actors that went into Palestine, or they are Palestinians, whatever percentage they are, did the excuse of the October 7th thing for Israel to do what it's doing. And they claim they know it's Iran. Why don't they just go after Iran? I mean, I don't know if that's true or not. This is just what little input I'm getting, but I'm getting a lot more here. How say you?
Yeah, well, Iran subsidizes Hamas as well as Hezbollah. But and I'll just be short, Jacqui. Just all the tension built up from this boycott, and Hamas, when it invaded Israel, it just exploded. And even though their intention
Did
was
Israel know that was going to happen in advance?
Well, that's another debatable issue, but they exploded. And so it's not justifiable that they did sometimes target non-military targets, but they were essentially basically going after military targets, but their emotion got out of a bit of control, and then civilians died. However, it's understandable, however, underlying that, and I don't think it was Iran pushing. Hamas really wanted to get out and breathe, and they want freedom and they want to stop the persecution in the West Bank too. Hamas is a group that actually Israel helped form years ago to counterbalance Fatah, but then it became kind of an is very to the right Islamic group, and really fights for Palestinian independence. And even in the place of the West Bank government, Abbas, the Palestinian Authority, which is collaborating with Israel, it's counterbalancing that by saying we are representing the Palestinian people. We are fighting oppression and the occupation.
Thank you.
But please, Jacqui, sorry.
Yeah. Regarding, Hamas is dedicated to ending the occupation. The way to get rid of Hamas is to get rid of the occupation rather than create a genocide. That would be the fastest way to get rid of Hamas. But regarding the media, I agree with you, Robert, that the media in this country is useless. The only thing I watch really is Al Jazeera, to be honest. That's where I get my information, because the media is so skewed with misinformation. It endangers my blood pressure to watch it. Anyhow, let's end on a little hope.
Make a few comments.
Let's end on a note of hope. As we were speaking today, there's a wonderful group in New York called Brooklyn for Peace, and they have been having a protest all day, 24 hours in front of Dan Goldman's office, who's the congressman from New York and Brooklyn. So you have groups of dedicated people. Jewish Voice for Peace is another great group, who are not stopping and who are doing outrageous things, as French mentioned. Jewish Voice for Peace said that for the 8 days of Hanukkah, they stopped a bridge or a tunnel for each day across the country. So we have to keep our energy up. That's why being together is so wonderful, because we get overwhelmed. I do. I get overwhelmed, and we feel a sense of despair. But we have to keep speaking up, because light will win in the end. Good will triumph. Unfortunately, there's going to be too many dead people, too many dead Palestinians before this ends. But their life is in vain if we don't keep up the fight. They will have died in vain. They will not have died in vain if this really changes things. And I think that now people know about Palestine. Robert, you said you didn't know about it before too much. People all over the world are protesting. Suddenly people understand the Palestinian problem.
Even the mainstream news for once, right? The mainstream news avoided everything about the truth of Palestine and Israel. Now it's, for once, is really bringing out articles that seemed more balanced, not so pro-Israeli.
They have not died in vain. And the way that their deaths will not be in vain is if we keep up the struggle. So thank you so much, everybody. Thanks, Frank. You were fabulous. It was really a good
Thank you, everybody, for being with us. Stay in touch.
It's just a small word.
Go ahead. Yeah,
well,
yeah.
Mr. Berlin, just a small things. Keep in mind that the Israel story is well powered now by messianic theory. You know, Israel was not created by a messianic story, but now it is powered and fueled by messianic beliefs. Yeah. So Hamas really it's irrelevant in that story. It's a small detail. It's a big messianic business.
Right, you're right. Yeah. Okay, so thank you all so much. Next week we're thinking about talking about who's getting rich from all this. Who's getting rich for all this?
Gun manufacturer.
Who's really raking in the money? And there was an article that I saw that inspired me, that some Israeli munition makers are becoming gazillionaires. So next week we're going to follow the money. So if you have any insights or any materials, please email them to me at jtaylorbasker@gmail.com. And let's sniff out the rats. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's spray the pesticide and get the roaches to come out. Guys making a cash out of blood. Okay. Thanks so much, Frank. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Thank everybody.
Thank you.
Yeah,
love you guys for showing up. Take care.
Thank you next week. Masalama.
Masalama.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.